Hello, my name is Roepke, and this is my presentation assignment for IEE 456, Intro to Systems Engineering. I choose FMEA as my presentation topic, Failure Mode and Effects Analysis. Today's agenda is, first, we're going to define FMEA and talk a little about its history. Then I will go over the FMEA process, rating system, to later show you the FMEA format, design, and a recent example from my capstone project. Let's define FMEA, failure mode and effects analysis. Measurements are important, and FMEA is another tool to assure the customer requirements are met successfully. FMEA is a structured process approach to prevent potential failure in a system to meet requirements, especially CTQs, which are critical requirements to the quality of the customer's perspective. For its history, we have been using FMEA processes for over 60 years as a way to standardize failure prevention processes. The Navy and NASA were the pioneers back in the early 1950s and 1960s to later find companies such as Ford Motors in the 1980s publishing and adapting a version of FMEA standards. Now, we find that each company has their own version of an FMEA process and their own instruction manuals on how to assign the proper numbers for FMEA rating system that we will later talk about. So for our FMEA process, we focus on three phases: preparation, process, and improvement. For the preparation process, we define how a part or a process can fail to meet S specifications, and identifying failure modes. We define the various ways that the product could fail, and then we state what could be the cause of this failure and the impact on the customer if the failure is not prevented. So all we want is prevention of the failure. For the FMEA process, we evaluate the failure modes mentioned before. We assign them an RPN number, which we will talk about in the next slide, to later reevaluate these failures and recommend an action to be taken to prevent these failures to happen. And finally, we improve our system or product by adding these suggestions and assuring the customer requirements are met and reducing the failure modes. So we want to prevent the failures to happen. And for the FMEA ranking system, after identifying failure modes, we have to ask ourselves, how can it fail? Can this product or this system fail? From the smallest failure to the most catastrophic one, this is how we rate the failures modes, by assigning those failures a number, like I mentioned before, following the FMEA standardized rating system, when we use a RPN, a risk priority numbers. We need to ask ourselves, how severe could the failure be? How often does this occur? Is it rare? Can we detect the problem before it can actually happen? We assign a number from 1 to 10 to 3 categories. The first one is severity, that we go from minimal severity to catastrophic severity. Like, for example, in a plane, if the handle breaks, how severe that is. I would say maybe a 1 or a 2. The airplane will still fly. But what if the airplane motor goes out? That will be a 9 or a 10 because it's catastrophic, and the airplane could just crash because it doesn't have a motor functioning. So the second one is occurrence. When we ask ourselves, will this happen often or once in a blue moon? So if it happens, following the example of the airplane, how often could the handle break? If a person too heavy that it broke it, Was a child playing with it? How often can that happen? Oh, I would say a 6. And how often can the motor of the plane fail? That could be maybe a 1 or a 2, because we hope that it won't happen. We designed the plane that the motor failure will be once in a blue moon. And finally, we have detection. Can we detect the problem before it happens? Can we detect if the motor will fail while the airplane is on air? Can we detect if the handle will break before the plane goes on air? Like, do we have any standards that will apply for this motor for us to prevent that the motor will fail? I believe we do. So now I want to show you how this is the way the FMEA format design looks. You can see the 3 RPNs categories that we just talked about, and how we will re-evaluate the failure mode. So I wanted to take a time to explain this example, which happened to me for my capstone project. So let's see this example. I had to analyze for my project, for my capstone project, I had to have a FMEA process. And one of my defined failures was that the semi-automatic sealing machine that I was working on as my capstone project could not seal the plastic bag. I want to go back a little bit. So my objective was to semi-automatize the process of sealing plastic bags that have diapers on it, inside them, sorry. I needed to go from manual sealing. We have people in Malaysia that seal it manually, the bags, to go from that to a semi-automatic machine where the person had to put the bag in the machine and the machine will seal the bag. So this is why one of my defined failures was the machine could not seal the bag. And then we say, okay, so what is a potential failure? That the bags cannot be delivered with the proper sealing. We cannot. Who's going to buy a diaper bag, a bag full of diapers that is not properly sealed, that it has an open sealing, or that the machine burned the diapers inside because it didn't have a proper sealing? So leading to the continuation of a manual sealing. So failing the project objective will be was the biggest failure, which was to semi-automatize the sealing process at this company. We wanted to go from a manual sealing to semi-automatic sealing. As a potential cause, I identified that the diapers inside the bag were not properly aligned. So my semi-automatic machine was the second machine. We had the main machine, which makes the diapers, and that main machine had a shooting range where it put 12 or 10 diapers, and it shoot the diapers, and somebody holds the bag, and the diapers go inside the bag, and that person puts this bag full of diapers in my semi-automatic machine. So one of the causes was that what was happening. So the shooting was not being aligned, and the diapers were not aligned, were like this that you can see in the picture. So that made the sealing machine to seal on the diapers, which means burning the diapers. So and the machine will stop sometimes or just seal it that it was not proper sealing. So as a mitigation plan, we proposed, and the engineering team and myself proposed, that we needed to have a special shooting mouth, we will say, to the main machine, where instead of being like this, it needed to be a little bit like this, like an angle of 25 instead of 5, because it was almost aligned like this as a 5 angle, and we wanted a 25, so the shooting mouth will go all the way to the end. So at the end, we ordered this new piece and we fixed the problem. And this way, we first we assigned this problem a severity of 9. Of course, we can sell a bag, diapers that are not properly sealed in a bag, and occurrence of 5, and then detention of 3. And that gave us the RPN of 135. And as a rule of thumb, any RPN that is greater than 100 should be analyzed and re-evaluated and create a mitigation plan for it. So after our FMEA process, the RPN changed from 135 to 42. And this process actually happened, and the shooting piece was added to the main machine, lowering the risk of the sealing machine to malfunction. So this actually happened last semester when I did my capstone project. So as a recap, we talked about failure mode and effects analysis, or FMEA. We defined it and talked about its history, its process, and rating system with RPNs. And finally, we saw a FMEA format design, an example from my capstone project that I completed last semester, and an example. Thanks a lot for listening. Please email me if you have any questions, and hope you enjoy the video. Thank you very much.